On the 11th day, at the 11th month, on the 11th hour, something very special happened in history. And we're going to talk about that today on this special program of Wednesdays with Willa. Happy Veterans Day to all of you out there. And we certainly support all of those who have supported us to be safe and free in the world. So thank you for your service. All of you who are tuning in today that are veterans, this special program is for you today. On my Wednesdays with Willa program, I typically have a special spiritual topic that we discuss. And it can be relating to either spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And today we're going to be talking about the 11th hour. What happens in the 11th hour and what kind of divine timing occurs in those moments? We're going to explore the number 11, which is a frequent number that can occur around certain folks at certain times, and really understand what it takes to be in that moment of the 11th hour. So those of you who are just tuning into my show for the first time, welcome. And this is year 4 of Wednesdays with Willa. So I encourage you to look back at the archive videos of my show. I have wonderful guests that have been on my show. We've had great spiritual topics. And it's, as some people tell me, they just binge watch it and really enjoy it. So you can go to my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. I also am transferring things as best I can to also have it on YouTube for those who enjoy that platform. So today is Veterans Day. And as I said a little bit earlier, this is our moment to really honor those who have served our country. And you know, there are different military things that have gone on through the years, but I think what's significant in terms of Veterans Day is that it marks the end of World War I. World War I was an extremely difficult experience for a lot of people. If you've ever talked to someone who's a veteran from any of the wars, very, very difficult. But what was so interesting is that the agreement, the truce, however you want to, the armistice of this, it happened on November 11th at 11 a.m. At the 11th hour, peace was called, and finally things were able to cease in that battle way that had been tearing people apart until that time. So there is a divine timing, I feel, when it comes to these circumstances. And I want to talk briefly about the number 11. So a lot of clients will ask me, I keep seeing the number 11. I keep seeing 1111 on the clock. It appears. And you ask yourself, what is that about? Well, that 11 is a number that is letting you know that the angels are with you, and that they're with you to help you take action in the moment of now, and that it helps you to create that life that you're choosing for yourself, and that you need to stay focused. Stay very focused, and possibly, step away from other kinds of distractions. Get very focused in that mode of prayer, of thanksgiving, and of true spiritual action. So a lot of times that's what the number 11 has to do. It's an extremely high vibrational number, which is probably why it all ended up for World War I, to end on that November 11th at 11 a.m. in 1918. So 102 years ago, folks, that occurred. Now, that is 11 is a master number, and it's really a number of spiritual awakening. So if that's a number that you've been seeing in your life or in a previous time in your life, you maybe have a bit more sense of why you were seeing that number, because other things were taking hold in your life. Now, how many of you have had instances where things have occurred in the nick of time, that there's been a blessing that has shown up in your life at the last possible moment, possibly after you even given up or let go of any hope of things transpiring for your good? we're going to talk about that in terms of the Bible, because it was mentioned in the Bible by Jesus, the 11th hour. And it's the parable of the laborers. There are people who are laboring in a field, and there are people on the sidelines, and they had not been hired to do the work that day. And we're just standing on the sidelines. And what gets said to them is, well, what are you doing waiting on the sidelines? You should be in there, give it your all. It's the 11th hour. You must show up and do the work. And they did do the work, and they were paid by the employer that day. And so sometimes things show up at that 11th hour. There's somehow an energetic shift that occurs within a person to allow for God to grant goodness and peace in the life. How many books and movies are there out there that we enjoy watching things happen in that nick of time, like somehow someone's saved at that particular moment, and they reach out the arm to grip that person just before they go off the edge. There are these exciting things that happen at that 11th hour in that nick of time. And it can sometimes really be quite fabulous when people show up in our life and help us in those moments. They become our heroes in those times. Sometimes we show up and we're the hero in our own story. It just depends. But these things happen in the nick of time. So are there some stories in your life, events in your life, where you have felt that in the 11th hour, God has shown up in your life, someone has shown up in your life to effect a positive change that helped you? You can share that in the Facebook comments today if you wish. And I think it's really a fascinating thing. So many people come to me with their stories of how things happened at the last possible moment. And Florence Shinn, who is a New Thought writer, who wrote a lot of her books during the Great Depression time. So she was really having to help people through that kind of financial difficulty that was a demoralizing time for a lot of people because they didn't have the money, the food to take care of themselves and their families. And things were kind of happening in that moment of just survival. So when we have these kind of survival moments, Florence Shinn talks in her book, The Game of Life, and how to play it. She talks about the 11th hour and what would be necessary from the standpoint of spiritual principles. So Florence Shinn, if you haven't had a chance to read her, and if you're interested at all in spiritual natural law and understanding a little bit more about why the Bible has certain symbolic language in it and how to apply it in our lives, I highly recommend it. And it is something that when we're in those kind of moments, those anxious moments, you can just feel yourself bracing for the impact or for the disappointment. And you don't know what to do in those moments because you feel that everything is so hard and you're scrabbling and there doesn't seem to be that hero in sight. There doesn't seem to be that miracle about to occur. And your energy starts to go down, 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 down. And you feel like you can't, that it's insupportable in your life to continue in that certain way. There's a lot of I give up that happens in those moments of the 11th hour. And we do have those opportunities in our life to really learn from what kind of spiritual response do we want to have during those times when we're having maybe a human freak out reaction to what is occurring. Does this resonate with any of you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Have there been these moments in your life where you have really questioned how things are going to proceed? And if it comes to your career or to a love relationship or the passing of someone who you care about so deeply, there are all of these kinds of things, or perhaps you've been diagnosed with an illness and you feel like you've only been given this little window of time to live, or there are all these kinds of things, and the movies and books have done an excellent job of, we're on the edge of our seat. Will they win out in the end? And we have that observer within ourselves of our own lives that is going on during those times. And it can be quite sad thinking of all of the things that are going to go wrong. But Florence Shinn talks about really being in that prayerful space. And miracles can happen. And that's why when we enter into a state of prayer, we are aligning ourselves with God. And we move from worry prayer and into faith prayer. So worry prayer is, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about this. Oh, what am I going to do? God, oh, can you just change this, God? Can you just, you get kind of in that frantic, energetic space. But when you move into faith prayer, you say, God, I know that I'm worried about this. I give this worry up to you, and I have faith, and I trust in the moment. I trust in you. And that can be such a difficult thing to do, especially because you can feel impending disappointment. But what I've seen in my own life and in the lives of others is sometimes when you're at the very end of something, that you have to give over and give it to God, to bigger hands than yours in those instances. And it really becomes an act of trust, an act of faith, and there's an aspect of surrender. And I don't really like that word, surrender. Surrender has a negative connotation. You give up? Surrender? What can we do in those kinds of situations, especially if you feel you're on the side of right? And there is I believe it is a surrender to God in knowing that you have to allow things to unfold in divine right timing, divine right order, and that the truth will come out ultimately, that somehow, some way there will be a reckoning of events that occur in your life and in the lives of others. So surrender seems to be an aspect of being able to deal with the 11th hour. But there's also a grit. There's like an internal grit that you get to within yourself, almost like a courageous place that knows that your life and your being is full of grace. And you can almost, if you were to dissect those moments, if everything's happening in rapid succession, you might be able to say, that's the moment where this happened. That was the moment where this really started to shift the energy. But by and large, with our regular kind of human problems or issues as they relate to career and family issues, it does become, if you have done everything you can think of to do, everything, you've done everything you can, and you know that's it. You've given everything. You have truly put all you can. You've anteed up. And then you have to let go and let God. And sometimes those miracles really occur so quickly, or sometimes they feel so achingly slow. But many times things are cleared up within a few weeks. And it really is amazing because you're thinking, why didn't that happen when I was putting all this effort to it? Well, sometimes you have to put all that effort into it and then have that surrender and let it go with light and love. And then God has a way of cleaning things up. All of a sudden, energy starts to percolate, and the angels are allowed to move in those kind of moments to help us with the nuances. And then in that web of existence, all of these people that out there, these web of existence, things start to pull. And it's a bit like if you've ever done cat's cradle with the string on your fingers, it's a bit like things pull in one direction and then in another. And there can be almost a dance between the fingers and the string, the web and you. And those things really start to come together, that tapestry of life come together in the 11th hour. Now remember what I said earlier about the number 11. That number 11 is considered an angel number. It is an extremely high vibrational number. It is a master number related to karma. It is very much that number that helps us to recognize that we are being loved and guided by forces greater than ourselves. And I think it's beautiful when that shows up in our life. And if we can recognize it and hold true to our creation of life and stay focused, we will be in alignment with our purpose. And it is okay to feel a little bit of that, nervousness or fear or whatever, but you have to bring yourself back into alignment, back into that purpose to be able to handle those moments of the 11th hour. So in terms of the stories of your own life, what are things that happen, again, in the nick of time, in that so-called 11th hour? Think back to those moments. How were you handling those things? Florence Shin, as I said before, she dealt with a lot of people who were going through financial, emotional upheaval, things like that. And they would say, I need $1,000 or I'm going to lose my home. And she said, you do everything you can. I will say the words to do the spiritual treatment of this. And you have to then hold that thought, the mental strength in those particular moments, the emotional strength, the physical strength, the spiritual strength, they all kind of come and unite in those moments. And the ultimate thing to do is to pray, to move into a space of prayer. Again, faith prayer, not worry prayer, to be in the righteousness of that moment. And we all at some point in our life want God to move the mountain, that huge mountain that might be in front of us that's blocking our path, or representative of people or a group or a situation, and we want God to move that mountain, things blocking our path. I'm having a memory in terms of watching logs being floated down a river, and they would cut trees down and then they would float them down the river so that they could get them to the sawmill. And people would have to be balancing. It's a great balancing act on some of the logs or moving and pushing them. And sometimes things would jam. The logs in the water would jam, and there would be the sense of, we can't carry on. We're stuck in these moments. And they had to find the right log that was jammed, the log jam. In those moments, remove the log, and then everything could flow again. So it takes us into an understanding of the flow of God's will. We ultimately need to be in the flow of God's will. And that can be very tricky because we have our own will. We're given free will. We have our own will. And sometimes when we're forcing our will so much, it does not happen. And we have to unify ourselves, align ourselves with the flow of God's will. So what I have found to be most effective in those 11th hour moments is to align myself with God's will. As much as possible, say, I am in alignment with God's will. Thy will be done. Those are very powerful words, because it is that act of surrender. It is that act of trust. It is moving us into a state of grace, and grace transcends karma. It's incredible what happens when you apply these spiritual principles in your life and in those moments. And so talking about them with you today, thinking about them with you today, perhaps you can see how you may have done those things in those moments or not done those things in those moments. And perhaps you can feel the corresponding energetic vibration within yourself and how it felt energetically when you were going through those moments. So I guess that's a bit of homework for yourself, if you'd like, to think back on those, to recapitulate within that energy, reclaim any energy you feel that you have lost in those moments, but ultimately learn from those moments of the 11th hour. whether you have felt that you have had a success or whether you feel that you have had a failure. Because we have a lot to learn in those moments of the request of the miracle, the request that happens in those moments. There are so many people that perhaps did not know how to pray, did not think to pray, perhaps put God to the side in a lot of their life, and they get to that 11th hour, and what are they doing? They're praying. They're praying. They're bringing themselves back into connection with God. There could be a lot of begging and pleading that goes on in those moments. But what do we reach out to? You reach out to that force that is greater than yourself, that is the transcendent force, the infinite intelligence that runs our world so beautifully. And so when we have these 11th hour moments, how do we want to react? What's our spiritual response to those things? To be able to understand God's maneuverings and to see the maneuverings of other people here on the earth plane. It can be very difficult in terms of group energy, because there are group dynamics that are involved many times in a life. And you have to somehow see that people are moving their particular pieces while you're moving your particular pieces. And you start to want to learn as much as you can from other people's mistakes and other people's successes. And that's what happens with that divine right timing, and when you're in that space of divine right practice. So is there something that you are needing in your life right now that you feel that you're really down to the wire? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to be in the flow of God's will? Pray and ask. And one of the last components I'll share with you in terms of Florence Shin, and because I just feel that she has such wise understandings of spiritual natural law. A really crucial component of prayer is thanksgiving. The aspect of gratitude. Bringing that energy, that divine light and conception of thanksgiving to all that you do. So give thanks in those moments for the things you are about to receive. And that's why it's an element that's, if you dissect the Lord's Prayer, you can see, I give thanks for the things I'm about to receive, that you really be in that moment of prayer of gratitude. So that's an important moment when you're in that divine right timing. You're moving through what can be ticking by so fast or so slowly in that 11th hour. And you're moving into a state of gratitude, so that's the energy that meets and greets you. Because you are responsible for the energy that you bring to a situation. You're not responsible for how other people interpret your energy, because that's up for grabs. But what you can do is be responsible for your energy in all of these things. So ask yourself what kind of spiritual response you want to have when you're going through that 11th hour, where you feel that things are happening very quickly or very slowly, depending on how that is. Now, I want to bring it back to Veterans Day, because that's how I started this particular show. And I want to mention that Veterans Day being on the 11th day of the 11th month, and then it was at 11 a.m., someone pointed out to me in terms of the poppy. So usually the poppy is something that is, you can go to a store and there'll be this little red poppy that has the greenery on it and little wire, and you can attach it to your clothing, and you can give a donation to benefit things. And they usually aren't out and about on Veterans Day, I don't think. But in terms of the poppy, the position of how you wear your poppy actually matters. Who would have thought? But the poppy it should be worn on the right side of your body, and the red represents the blood of all of those who have given their lives, and the black represents the mourning of those who didn't have their loved ones return home. And The green leaf represents the grass and the crops growing and the future prosperity. Green has that healing vibration to it, that understanding that there is hope after war has destroyed so much. And that leaf, that green leaf of hope, is to be positioned at 11 o'clock in order to represent the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month. And it's really such a beautiful symbology during this. It's a beautiful recognition of the importance of that 11th hour, where peace can be declared, that things can come to an end at the 11th hour. So I hope that you take that with you today, and that when 11 a.m. rolls around today, or maybe on another day, that you'll think of that moment of peace, that higher vibration of angelic influence. Ask the angels to help you in this moment. Angel of truth, help me with discernment now. And there may be something that you receive on an instant download level that will help you in that particular moment. That the angels and that God are working with you in those moments to bring you peace and clarity. It is much easier to receive information when you're in a joyful, centered place than when you are in an angry, worried, resentful condition. So it does behoove us to work ourselves as much as we possibly can into that space of peace energetically, to withstand what is going on in our lives at any given moment, and to help others, to help other people withstand whatever is going through, whatever is going on in their lives. And the important thing to keep in mind, of course, is that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. That we will move on from these moments. That we are not stagnant beings, that we are growing, evolving, and changing, and that we are working energetically for vibrational truth and understanding, and that we will ultimately have that experience in the here and the now. In present day form, we may notice it in various moments, the miracle of a particular moment, the power of now that is existing and available to each and every one of us. And also, ultimately, in that 11th hour. So I thank you very much for your kind attention today. And I look forward to next week. I will have a veteran as my guest next week on Wednesdays with Willa. His name's Ron Nagy. You may know him as the historian of Lilydale. And we're going to give you a very special tour of the Assembly Hall portraits to give you a bit of the who's who that have gone before us in spiritualism and in Lilydale. So I'm really excited to be able to share that special place with you. Please join me here on Wednesday at 10 a.m. on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. And we'll have a delightful time together then too. So many prayers for you in this moment now, and when you need it in the 11th hour. You be well and make this day a miracle. Bye-bye.